Hi there. Welcome to the Shift with Intention podcast. I'm Jamie Zagrafis, your host, and today we have Whitney Weiser with us as our guest. And Whitney is passionate about empowering confidence and strength among women. She leads with the understanding that a person's health and wellness in their physical body is a byproduct of the condition of their mind and spirit. She hosts events and coaches with the mission of helping women find their purpose, create a vision for their life, and live it out. Welcome to the show, Whitney.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what you have to tell everybody today. And why don't you start us off with telling us a little bit about you so our listeners can understand who you are?
Okay. Oh, where do I start? Kind of like you mentioned, I do a wide variety of things. Also a IFBB pro athlete, which stands for International Federation of Bodybuilding. In our world, we think everybody knows what IFBB means, but then get out into mainstream, they're like, what is IFBB? Yeah, so IFBB pro athlete, an Olympian. So I actually competed with some of the best athletes in the world in 2016. So that was a heck of a journey. Now what I do, I have my own competition that's for females only. And so it was one of the first female-only bodybuilding and fitness competitions in the world. And so I've had it for 5 years now. So I do that. I host workshops, retreats, just do a wide variety of coaching for women, kind of just like you said, to empower them. I had a really rough road in a lot of toxic relationships throughout my life. And I guess that's why I coach women, because I just never want them to struggle as bad as I did. So that's where all of it comes from. In a nutshell.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love it. I remember talking to you to ask you to be in our book Shift. And why I remember you saying, a lot of people have asked me to write my story and I always said no, but for you, I'm going to say yes. So why was that?
Well, a couple of reasons. First, I didn't have to write the book by myself. And so after talking to you, it just put me at ease. Like I was like, oh, there's going to be a total of 40 authors and I only have to write one chapter, not a whole book. I'm like, I can do this. So that was the first reason. And then the second reason, this is what I do. Like I share my story simply to empower women. I know it can empower everybody, but my heart is for women. But so it was just an automatic yes. Of course I'm going to share my story and, hopefully inspire more confidence and strength among women. But again, I really like the idea of just kind of easing in. I am going to write my own book one day, but this was the perfect opportunity for me. Perfect timing, just came out of nowhere. And I was like, yes, for sure.
I remember you sent me your TV, whatever that was, that video when we first met. And you had emailed me the link, and I was like, "Wow, what a story!"
So from the 700 Club.
So,
oh yes, yep, I remember.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah, I was like, "That's wild." So I was super excited that, and I still am, obviously, but that you were in it. So more excited to have you on today, so everybody can meet you. And so let's start off. Tell us something in your life. Pick and choose some shift that you've had, but tell us all about the old version of Whitney before we hear about your shift.
Oh, okay.
And go as deep as you want, girl.
I might have to two different shifts popped in my head when you said that. So I might have to do both.
Okay.
So, the first one is the one that I talk about in the book a little bit, in my chapter that I wrote. And I was in my early 20s, just getting into the bodybuilding scene, just started competing. This was a brand new lifestyle to me because I was a bartender. I was in college. I was a bartender, downtown Nashville, drank every night, nothing unusual about that, like in my world. And so when I started prepping for my first show, my trainer was like, you can't drink. And I'm like, what? Alcohol doesn't have calories. What are you talking about? And he's like, it's not going to help you. You have to stop. And so just wrapping my mind around little things like that was a shift in itself. Just going from a completely undisciplined lifestyle to one of complete structure and routine every single day. Like, you got to wake up early, you got to do your cardio, get all your meals ready for the day, take them with you to work, all 6 meals so you can eat, and then gym after work, and then go home to get everything ready for the next day, get sleep. It was like a structured lifestyle. So that was a huge shift. And honestly, like, I don't even know what motivated me so hard at that time to do that. But I like challenge. I'm a competitive person. I like challenges. And I think that's really what it came down to. And then after I got on stage the first time, I got second place, which was good. But I knew I could have got first if I wouldn't have like cheated on my diet a couple times and like missed a couple cardio sessions and all this stuff. So I was so mad. I was mad at myself for not giving 100% effort. And it lit a fire in me that like just never got put out. And I just started prepping for a year out for the next show. So I'm going to win. I'm going to win. And so I started, getting better and better at it. I started competing at the national level and doing pretty well. I was winning shows all over the country, just out of nowhere. And so I was also in an abusive relationship at this time. I don't know how much I want to tell from the chapter, but I'm just going to tell it. People can go read the details later. But so I made the decision to leave this abusive relationship, and he decided that he didn't want the same thing and ran me over with his SUV, which crushed my spine. I had to get metal rods and screws inserted into my spine. Was in the trauma unit at Vanderbilt for actually only a week, which doesn't sound like long at all, but they released me, and they were like, basically, you're young, you'll heal. You're going to have to learn how to walk again. You'll probably never get back to the bodybuilding stage again. So, just go ahead and mentally prepare for that. And I'm like, you don't know.
How old are you at this
24.
point? Okay. So how long were you in that relationship?
Only about a year, a little less than a year.
Okay. So let's talk on that before you skirt over to the next thing. So abusive relationship, less than a year. So obviously abusive relationships can happen, and they can lure you in and get you attached to, I don't know, whatever, 2 months, 3 months, doesn't matter. So when you tell the story, he ran you over. What does that mean? Like, ran you over
with his truck?
I know what it means.
Oh, sorry. With his SUV, his truck. So we had broken up, but he called me while I was at work. I worked a corporate job at the time, and he wanted to talk about things. He was super emotional, so I finally gave in. I'm like, okay, just come up to my job on my lunch break. I'll talk to you. So I went out in the parking lot, got in his vehicle. We talked for maybe 5 minutes at the most. And I was like, you know what? This is not a good situation. This is a waste of time to even talk about. This is not good. We're done. I get out of the vehicle, started walking back across the parking lot to go back into my job, into the building. And he pulls out of the parking space and just floors it towards me. And I saw him coming, but I just thought he was trying to scare me. I didn't think anybody was crazy enough to actually run me over, right? You don't really think that, because everybody's like, why didn't you jump out of the way? And I'm like, I didn't think anybody would actually do that. I thought he was just trying to scare me. And so he never hit the brakes, just completely ran me over. I got dragged under the vehicle, like across the parking lot. And then whenever, whatever was holding me under the vehicle, when it let me go, the rear tire actually rolled over my midsection and crushed my spine, according to eyewitnesses. So that part, of course, I didn't remember. I didn't really know what was going on. But besides that, I never lost consciousness. So I was aware of what was going on. I just didn't know exactly what happened and how bad I'd been hurt. I knew I was in pain. I just didn't know the severity of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you think it was premeditated? Or you think he was just overreacting? And
when we went through the court process and everything, I ended up taking a plea that was 2nd degree attempted murder. First degree is premeditated. I didn't think that we could prove it was premeditated. I don't really know that it was premeditated. Honestly, he's a very emotional and impulsive person. So I think it was just heightened emotions, and it just all happened. I don't think it was really premeditated. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, triggered for sure, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But
all right.
I forgot where was I in this?
So you were drug and eyewitnesses. So you're in the hospital, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Next thing.
Yeah. So I had the surgery. I still have the metal rods and screws in my back today, and that was 11 years ago now. So had those inserted. Mm-hmm. I get released after a week. My parents take me back to their house, and they're like, you got to come live with us for a little while. And craziest thing, I was so confused. And I'm like, aren't you just going to take me back to my apartment? Because I live in Nashville, but they live about an hour away from Nashville. I was like, why can't you just take me back to my apartment? And my dad is like, honey, you can't walk. And it was just not computing. I'm like,
right.
I don't understand what that means. I can do anything. I can do everything. Like, what are you talking about? I can't walk.
Right.
And so went home to live with them and started going a little bit downhill after that because I just didn't want to eat anything, wouldn't eat, didn't want to move either because I was in so much pain. And so both my parents work full time. And so I would just be watching TV in their recliner all day. And my dad would come home on his lunch break and he'll be like, have you got up? Have you walked at all today? Done anything? I'd be like, nope. He would force me to get up and walk down the hallway, even though if it was just like 20 steps. He would make me do something as stubborn as I was. And so eventually, 10, 20 steps became 200 steps. And I would go from the hallway in the house to the driveway and then around the block. And then that's all I would do. Like by a month later, I would just be walking several times a day because that's literally all I could do is just walk.
Yeah.
And so while I was walking, I would just I'd have headphones in, I'd listen to, podcasts, listen to music, but also just visualize like myself on stage, constantly like seeing myself just on stage with other competitors around me and like just visualizing myself up there and winning and like over and over again. And it's turned out to be pretty powerful. Like I didn't know what I was doing at 24 years old. I did not know what visualization was or any of this stuff. I just was doing it. And, man, it helped me so much because it gave me hope. It gave me motivation. Like it gave me a purpose, even though the purpose was just me getting back to stage and it was just about me at that time. It gave me a purpose to move forward and I would not let anybody tell me anything else. Like, if they even said any negative thing to me, I would cut it off. I'm like, if you're going to talk like that, you can leave because my mind can't take it right now. I need all positivity and that's it. So that eventually I got back on stage. It did take me a lot longer to get competitive again. And I did eventually finally turn pro, which was my goal in the first place. It just took me an extra 3 years. To turn pro. And then when I turned pro, I didn't know what else to do besides compete. So I just kept going. And I did, let's see how many shows, 6 shows, never placed in the top 5, not one time. But the 7th show I came in, I won the whole thing, which qualified me for the Olympia, which is the biggest, best stage in the entire world. So it just took that one time. And I got to compete at the Olympia, which is what pro athletes in our sport dream of, and many don't make it. And so it was just, I'm going to get emotional talking about it. But it was just so cool. Like I didn't even have that big a dream for myself, but God had other plans. And like, I just had to keep going. I just had to keep going and not quit. And he fulfilled it. So.
That's so when you sit here and talk about the structure you had prior to the accident, and then you go from full on structure of every meal, cardio, and then you go to none. I mean, that had to be so hard.
Yeah. I had to kind of just implement the routine and structure back in. Like, I mean, of course not at first because I didn't even want to eat at all. But even like with my walking, my walking became my routine. Like I'm walking this time. Most of the other time I was just sitting in there watching TV or reading, just trying to fill my mind with something positive. But I did what I could. And I had a 5-pound dumbbell that I would at least be able to work out my arms with, even though I was sitting in a chair. And I had a home therapy, whatever they're called, come over and help. And I got so frustrated with it because I'm like, this stuff is easy. This is like for overweight people that, you know, I'm like, I need more than this. And I'm like, I'm going to do my own therapy. And so it forced me to figure out ways to build my body back that I wasn't used to. And so like when I finally did get back to the gym, like I couldn't put a huge barbell with weights on my back anymore to squat. And that's all I had known. I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to build my legs back? So it forced me to find new ways to do things and like isolated movements and things like that. And so that was another just major shift in my mind, is having to learn how to build my body back, but in a completely different way. And it also, like when I started training clients, it helped me work with their injuries and figure out ways to help them build their bodies. And so it became pretty cool. Like the knowledge that I had to gain was helping other people, you know, eventually.
Right. Yeah.
So
the emotional aspect of the accident, how did you get from A to B?
You know, honestly, I didn't process the emotional part of it until years later, because I just couldn't, I just wasn't there. Yeah. You know, part of me wonders if I just didn't need to process it, or God kind of just healed me that quickly from it, or if I was just repressing them for a while. And I'm not sure. I don't know if I'll ever have that answer completely. Yeah. But I do know that I was able to forgive him for running me over, like almost taking my life. I was able to forgive him within a matter of 2 or 3 weeks after it happened, which is not humanly possible. So not at all. Right. That was definitely supernatural. I feel like God just allowed me to mentally just release it, because if I would have held on to that bitterness, I wouldn't have been able to move forward, because
I agree.
You can never move forward with any bitterness, resentment, unforgiveness in your heart. You just can't. And so God just kind of helped me just let that go within a few weeks. And so that was the emotional aspect of it. I let that go. Yeah. That doesn't mean that wasn't the end of my toxic relationships. I'll put it that way. Okay. I had many, many, many more after that. Okay. Because I didn't know any different. Now at 24, I didn't know what was normal, what was not normal in relationships. And I just kind of kept repeating the same patterns over and over again. I didn't know why. And it wasn't until probably 2020, actually, when I was kind of forced to sit with myself and face my emotions and things about me, that maybe I needed to change or think about differently so that I could have a different life. And so that was another shift. There's so many shifts. I could talk about so many shifts. Yeah. But that was another.
So go into that. What does that? Because I'm pretty sure there's a million people hopefully going to watch this that are in a pattern of choosing toxic people.
Yeah.
So what did you sit with?
So I did just a lot of, what do I want to call it? I guess inner work. Spending a lot of time with God, just asking him to like reveal things to me. I had a couple coaches that helped me walk through some things that just came out of nowhere, which is so weird. Like, so I just believe God sent me.
Is it weird?
God sent me the people that I needed to like help me work through some things. And I went through one coaching program that forced me to get really clear on who I was and what I wanted in life. And I had never, ever, ever done that before. And now it's like one of the main staples that I coach on is your identity, defining your identity. Because the reason why most people choose toxic relationships is because they don't have their identity. They don't know who they are and how powerful they are and how powerful their purpose is, or they would never compromise it. And that is the shift for me. So when I really truly not just knew who I was, but just like deeply understood what I was capable of and the people I was capable of helping, then I was never willing to compromise that at all, because it wasn't about me anymore. It was about all the people that I knew needed my help and I was going to help in the world. And me being in a toxic relationship wouldn't allow me to do that. So that was the shift for me, is just getting clear on what I wanted in a relationship, what I wanted in a man, everything like written out completely.
Yep.
Yep.
And then what happened?
And then after I actually got super clear on what I wanted in a relationship and a man, within 6 months, here comes this man that I had written exactly in the description. Here he comes.
Yeah.
And crazy because I'd already known this person. We had been friends. We'd lost touch a little bit, but we had been kind of friends for years. He was actually engaged to somebody else at this time. But like within a few months of me writing out this description of him, just all of a sudden his fiance just decided she wanted somebody else and left. And he said he was driving down the road like a few weeks after that, and God said, call Whitney. And so he called me. And I'm like, why are you calling me? And so we just started talking, and like I had no intention to date him because I was like, oh no, you just got out of a serious relationship. Like you need time, you know, whatever. I'm good by myself anyways. Like I'm fine.
I just wrote a list, and that's not, you just getting out is not on my list.
Right. So I was like, you know, whatever. But we started hanging out just as friends. And over time, like we just started hanging out more and more. And so it kind of turned into dating. And then within a really short time frame of dating, I was like, this is just easy. Like I've never had a relationship that is just like easy. And so it was a whole new world to me. I'm like, I didn't know it could be like this. Like just two people like living in their purpose. Like one's not trying to control the other. They're not jealous of anything going on. Like it's just great. It's a supportive, loving relationship. And so within a few short months, we were engaged, and within a year of us even starting to talk, we were married. So now we've been married for 9 months.
Yeah. After we met, you got married. When was the date?
March 11th.
Yeah, it was right before the book launch. And I was like, oh, girls getting married? I didn't even know. So I was like, oh, yeah, beautiful pictures.
Yep. So it's pretty cool what happens when you actually get clear and know what you want, exactly what you want. Then it actually starts to happen.
So now what is your life like?
So now.
And do you ever, with that, two-part, now what is it like? And then do you feel like you slip into an older version of you that you're like, nope, Whitney, you know, come back to this one.
Yep, definitely. There are still things there. There's still some triggers and things and bad patterns that I'll slip into. Actually, even this year, like I just got really negative for a little while, and like would just let my thoughts, the negative spiral just happen. And that's not even like me like anymore. I don't even do that. I stop them before they even get to the spiral. And so it was just really weird. And this went on for weeks and weeks and weeks until finally I was just like a completely miserable person, like really on the inside, and just negative, complaining, criticizing, just not good. And I finally kind of picked up on it. And, you know, I read all the time, and that's what helps me a lot is just reading like about the brain and stuff like this, because that really helps me put in perspective. The more I know, like the science behind it, and then putting that with like theology and like what the Bible says, and also just science together really helps me. And so I started like putting those practices into place. I meet with my mentor every other week, and so she helped me too. And then something that helps me is just like almost teaching and coaching other people on the things that I need help with too. You know, it's so crazy, but it's like half the time I'm teaching something, I'm still only like halfway through it. Like I'm not even completely haven't overcome it yet, which is interesting. And I don't know, people probably have mixed opinions on that, but it doesn't matter because it helps me and I'm helping other people in the process. So I started just kind of like a book study group here recently. And the book that we're going through is Get Out of Your Head. And like, that's been amazing. So,
yeah, I bet. You know, I've heard, I mean, I believe there's no coincidences or anything in life, but I heard that when you're coaching people, a lot of times you're given the people that it's same idea that can help you just as much. And then I've heard that once you can teach the lesson, you've mastered it. And so I'm sure each person that you're coaching and whatnot, whatever it is, whatever lesson, you're like, oh, and then you master it enough that the next person you've probably like, well, I learned it, and I think that's a really neat thing. Once you can teach it, you've mastered it.
It is really hard to, because you really have to know what you're talking about, like when you're teaching somebody else, but it forces you to get clear on it. It really forces you to. And so it makes me do even more research or get even more coaching myself so that I'm prepared and feel capable enough to coach other people on it. Like I can't, it's not like I can live two separate lives. Like I'm teaching this one thing and I'm doing the complete opposite in my own life because you can't.
Well, right.
You can't. That will not last long. Like,
no, you got to walk the walk and talk the talk. So I think as you know, I'm a huge believer in working on yourself. I feel like how many people are like that? I don't know. The people that we attract probably to read the book are, but what do you do? What's your not necessarily daily practice, but an idea of what you do to work on yourself, because we're always growing. And I think if the more people that understand that piece, I think a lot of people forget about that.
Yeah.
So what does that kind of look like?
I've learned to take cues on, like, if I'm feeling frustrated or overwhelmed or just like there's a tornado going on around me, then I know, I know I'm not doing what I need to be doing, like for myself, which is things that help me is just listening to, audiobooks, podcasts, reading helps me so much. Devotionals. I like to write my prayers down instead of just praying because I get super distracted if I'm just like in my head praying. But when I write the prayers, I've been doing it for 2 or 3 years now. And it's amazing to actually go back and look at what I was praying for and how I was praying for it like a couple years ago. But then also to see how God answered that prayer. And it's usually completely different than how I thought he was going to answer it. But if I didn't write it down, I would never remember like what I actually prayed for. I mean, we would never remember. And so I think that's important to go back and look at that stuff so you can, it just gives you hope. Like you celebrate the victories, you can see so many victories when you have it written down and recorded like that. And it's so helpful to get you through more hard times is when you already see how you've already gotten through other hard times. You can do it again.
Yeah. Well, and it gives you a little bit of, I can't think of the word,
confidence.
I guess validation. Yeah. Like, oh, I prayed for this and then here it is. And then, oh, I guess I'll pray again. And, and that's, neat.
Yeah.
So
we need it.
I think,
I said, we need it. I mean, we need it sometimes because like I would forget everything and I would just get in my negative head, let it spiral down out of control probably. Yeah. And it's just, it's not true. Like I would think, I never get what I want in life. Nothing ever happens for me, which is all not true, but we all get in our heads sometimes. Yeah. So, yeah.
What's funny, I see a counselor. She's amazing every couple of weeks. And I was in there. One thing went bad, like in October. And I went in there. I'm like, can you believe this? Why are all these bad things happening to me? She goes, stop it. You have so many good things that have happened to you. I'm like, you're right. That's a stupid sentence. Like, but it's the same thing. Oh, yeah. One thing I'm like, oh my God. Yep. But we do, it's because we do. And we can.
Like all the bad things that have ever happened to you in your life, even though, 20 times more good things have happened, but it triggers us back to just all the few bad things. And then it's like, oh, nothing good ever happens,
Yeah. So. It's so silly. Okay. So I think you have some very valuable advice, but if we could break it down for someone that's struggling either in a toxic relationship, whatnot, I heard a lot of things about clarity. I heard about writing things down. What would be like the top 3 things you would tell somebody, coach somebody? What would those top 3 things be if they're struggling? Where they could start?
First thing, get alone in a quiet space with yourself and just be with yourself, because that is something that I could never do for the longest time. I kept myself busy. I still do sometimes just because I like the work that I do, really. But I deep down probably was just scared to death to just be with myself and have to face certain things about myself that I didn't like. But when you can actually finally start to do that, and just accept the things about you and realize that, like, that's not the whole you, like those are parts of you and that's okay, then, I mean, your world just changes. It really does. And so that's number one, is just get alone, quiet time with yourself and, think about your life. Like, think about who you are, who you were made to be, because we were all made for a purpose. And I think that's lost a lot, as people think that they don't have any purpose in life and, they just go through the motions every day. And it's just not true. We were all created for a specific purpose, if not multiple purposes. And so it's up to us to find that. And I find that by seeking God. So that's going to be number 2, seek God, and you will find your purpose. I've wasted so much time, like, trying to figure out my purpose, like, just by myself. It's like, if you want to know what something was made for, why won't you go to the person that made it and then just ask them? And that's how I feel about God. It's like, why do we try to figure out what we were made for when we could just ask the person that made us and then tell us? So number 2 is seek God, so you can find your purpose. Third piece of advice, what would it be? I don't know. Those are the 2. Those are the top 2. Okay. I guess number 3 would just be, again, just writing down things, like writing down what you want so you can get clear on it and you can add to it as you go, because you can have so many things in your head. Like, it's not real until it's down on paper. If you don't write it down, it's not, being in your head doesn't count.
Right. Get out of your head in the book.
Get out of your head.
Get out of your head. All right, my dear. Wonderful, wonderful. If people want to get a hold of you for whatever reason, coaching, learn more about your story, how can they do that?
Instagram is probably the best place. So my Instagram,
I knew you'd say that.
Of course, best things that have happened to me you came from my Instagram page through introduction. Yes, my best friend came through Instagram. Anyway, my main page is at Whitney Wiser Fit. And so that will lead everybody to my retreat page, my coaching, everything. So.
Okay. I love it. Well, thank you. I'm excited to see everybody hear about you and learn from your story and your brilliance.
Thank you. So, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to see where this podcast goes. I'm glad you started it. So.
I am too. It took a little bit, but here we are.
It's the right time.
So. All right, girl. Thank you so much. And everybody, shift with intention.